Hello, my students. I'm going to record today the Book of Numbers. Its name comes from the census mentioned in the first part of the book, as well as the lists of priestly regulations. The census is of men of military age, 20 years and older, in the beginning of the book. And 40 years later, we're going to see another census also of the number of fighting men, 20 years of age or older, but it's the second generation. So the second part of the book is going to deal with the wandering in the wilderness of the Israelites. And it's really wonderful that we're reading this, the accounts of wandering in the wilderness at the same time that the Jewish community around the world is celebrating Sukkot. So we're going to look at the original story and see how over the years it's become a wonderful and joyful remembering, not a harsh, bitter remembering of the hardships of the desert, but a loving remembrance of the closeness of God, who is tender and merciful with his people. And yet there are harsh consequences for wrongdoing. So we have those two sides in this book. And that's because the people complain continually about lack of water and food. They do have manna, but they become bored with manna day in and day out. Boiled manna, baked manna, manna fricassee. They long for the food they had in Egypt, even though it was at the cost of their freedom. So now they're learning to be a free people and learning that there are hardships that go along with that. But they are learning to be uh, the chosen people, a kingdom of priests. They're learning what it is to be brothers and sisters and to depend upon one another, to obey God, to be true to the relationship with God. There also are challenges from Moses' own brother and sister. Aaron and Miriam claim that they have authority equal to Moses. They are jealous of Moses and challenge his authority. As a consequence, Miriam contracts leprosy. She must stay outside the camp for a week until God grants Moses' prayer for healing. There's another problem, and this is the princes, in other words, the leaders, the young men who are highly respected, tend tell if they go in to reconnoiter the land of Israel or the Canaan. And it's amazing. 600,000 physically fit, intelligent men are not enough. It depends on your mindset. If your mind is still, I am weak, I am a slave, I have nothing to offer, you're going to fear everything. But if you are resolute and strong and valiant, that's another case. That's something entirely different. Then for you, no obstacle is great enough against the God of Israel, and therefore you can do it. So there are 12 spies, one from each tribe, and they go into Canaan and they look around. And this is the story that they tell. 10 of these princes, these young leaders, tell the Israelites that the land is flowing with milk and honey, but that giants occupy the land. On the other hand, there are two men, Joshua and Caleb. They don't see the size of the enemy, they see the greatness of God. And they believe that if people unite and work together, that they can take the land, they can settle the land, they can be peaceful and prosperous. So Joshua and Caleb want to enter Canaan because they have confidence in God's power. Now, we'll have to talk later on about what archaeologists are seeing, because they're seeing that there were city-states that were strong, but the level of injustice was so great that caused corruption from within. The leaders did not look after the larger part of their population, which was poor, and it would be considered the servant class. The servant class did not put up with it. they either ran away to the highlands to form communities that were more egalitarian, and they just did not repair the infrastructure of these cities. They just said, we're done. We're done with you. So even before the first battle of Jericho was fought by Joshua and the tribes, it appears that there was a lot of decaying infrastructure in Canaan. But we'll talk about that and the evidence that archaeologists bring up. Anyway, the people give in to the message of fear. They are afraid the Canaanites will defeat and slaughter them. God declares that they will wander in the wilderness for 40 years until every member of the generation that left Egypt, 20 years of age and older, will perish. Only Caleb and Joshua, who trusted in God, will enter the promised land along with the offspring of the first generation. And by the way, people, don't be worried by that sound in the background. That's not you, and that's not in the classroom. That's my cat playing with a cat toy. I beg your forgiveness. This is a video that you have not seen, so you can watch it and get another perspective on Sukkot, which ends this Friday at sundown. God punishes Moses and Aaron because they also are faulty in their leadership, like the 10 princes who don't believe God will come to the rescue. They harshly scold the people when they strike the rock to obtain water. They do not show God's holiness in the way they treat the people. Therefore, God does not allow them to enter the promised land. The land needs a leader who is nurturing, who can lead by example, by mercy, by tenderness. And we'll talk more in a separate video about God's mercy. The prophecy of the Star of Jacob comes in the book of Numbers in chapter 24, verses 14 through 17. It symbolizes the future reign of King David, or the great destiny of one of his descendants. It was interpreted by the early Christians as a prophecy of Christ's birth, revealed by the star that led the Magi to Bethlehem to worship the Christ child. There are a lot of scriptures behind. Right now, I'm just giving you a summary of what is in the book. But there's more than that. The book itself has the scriptures to go along with these teachings that you find in the book of Numbers. So I'm going to also assign the readings of scripture. And so next time we'll go to the framework of Deuteronomy.